The United States says it struck targets in Venezuela and captured the country's president and his wife. Military helicopters in the skies over the capital, Caracas. Reports say the US Army's elite Delta Force unit was involved. President Maduro has ruled for nearly 13 years. He's said to have been charged in New York this lunchtime with drugs and weapons offences. And this is the scene right now, live in Caracas. Later this afternoon from Florida, President Trump will give a news conference. Good afternoon, and a major developing story this lunchtime. President Trump says the US has carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and has captured its leader, Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, and flown them out of the country. Large explosions rocked cities across Venezuela, including a military airfield in the capital, Caracas. Well, reports suggest elite US Delta Force teams were involved in the capture. Venezuela's interior minister says the country will overcome US attacks. And in the last few minutes, President Maduro is said to have been charged in New York with drugs and weapons offences. Our South America correspondent, Ione Wells, reports.
Venezuela had an abrupt awakening. Its capital, Caracas, under attack from the US. Helicopters, flames, explosions. These were strikes targeting the city's key military infrastructure. Eyewitnesses woke in the early hours of the morning to the booms.
I just wake up almost at 2 a.m. in the morning with a huge bang. Everything was vibrating. I just jumped to the window and I was able to see something in flames in the middle of their runway.
Venezuelans were not just woken by the strikes, but also the news that their president, Nicolas Maduro, had been captured. On Truth Social, President Donald Trump said he and his wife had been flown out of the country after a large-scale strike against Venezuela. His government colleagues do not seem to know his whereabouts.
We demand from the Donald Trump government immediate proof of life for President Maduro and the First Lady.
There's been months of speculation about if and when the US might strike Venezuela. It has sent its biggest military deployment to the Caribbean region in decades. Thousands of troops, along with warships, planes and helicopters. It has seized at least 2 oil tankers near Venezuela, which it says carried sanctioned oil. Venezuela accuses the US of wanting to steal its oil and resources. The US has also carried out dozens of strikes on small alleged drug trafficking boats, killing at least 110 people. It says those operations are part of a non-international armed conflict with alleged traffickers, but legal experts say they could be in violation of the laws of warfare.
They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
The US has long accused President Maduro of running a criminal trafficking network, something he strongly denies. On Thursday, Mr. Maduro said he was open to talks.
If they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want Venezuelan oil, is Venezuela ready for US investments? Like with Chevron, whenever, wherever, and however they want.
Venezuela says it will resist foreign troops. The US clearly wants regime change. That's no longer just a distant threat. Ione Wells, BBC News.
Well, we heard from the BBC's Vanessa Silva in Ione's report there. Let's go live to her now in Caracas. Vanessa, what's the feeling there now?
Yes, well, at this moment, people is just waking with the news. It's a city that do not sleep at all. And people is just with precautions, trying to avoid the street, but there is others that are going around trying to buy food, to go to the pharmacies. I've been speaking with friends that said that they saw people queuing in front of the pharmacies, another that has said that a lot of military and police are going around the city, trying to keep the calm on the society. Also, the government has called the supporters to go to the streets, and they are gathering some points. I don't know how much people. Also, the TV state channel show pictures and videos about the military air base and how the strikes make damage on vehicles and in the perimeter fence.
Vanessa, thank you. Well, Keir Starmer says he wants to establish the facts of what happened in Venezuela and wanted to talk to President Trump later. Russia called the strikes deeply concerning, while Germany says it's watching the situation with what it called concern. Our World News correspondent Joe Inwood reports.
It's hard to overstate the significance of this moment. The strikes are the first the US has carried out in Latin America in more than 3 decades. If, as claimed, special forces have captured the Venezuelan president and his wife, it is an event without precedent. Nicolas Maduro has been in power since 2013, taking over from his mentor Hugo Chavez. He has become increasingly authoritarian, especially since retaining power in highly disputed elections. In recent months, Venezuelan forces have been on high alert, a response to the ramping up of pressure from the US. Details of the operation to capture him are still emerging, but it's being reported that Delta Force, an elite US unit, were involved.
So that's a very daring operation, but a key part of that to me, Venezuela was on alert, being able to seize the president, fly out. To some extent, it suggests that there was a degree of internal support for the US move, and we're certainly hearing some rumors at the moment that this was a negotiated exit. The question remains negotiated with whom in Venezuela, but that this was supported to some extent by people inside the country.
The closest historical comparison is the capture of Panamanian President Manuel Noriega on this very day in 1990, the last time the US intervened militarily in the region. Like Maduro, he too had been accused of drug trafficking and faced huge military pressure. But his capture, after an 11-day holdout in the Vatican embassy, was only achieved by a full-scale ground invasion. Venezuela's allies, including Russia, have condemned today's events, while even the US's closest partners have not openly welcomed it.
I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts.
There's still much we do not know about today's events. But what we can say is that the capture of a sitting president in this way is unlike anything seen before, and will have long-lasting consequences for Venezuela and the wider region. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, Ione Wells, our South America correspondent, is here with me. As you can see, Ione, just how significant a moment is this?
Hugely significant. If there was any doubt remaining that part of the US's military operations in the region in recent months has been about regime change, those doubts have now firmly gone. The big question is now, where does this leave Venezuela? Now, clearly, the US would like the opposition, led by the Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, to eventually take power. The US has been pretty clear about their alliance with her and her movement. It's not, though, that simple. The infrastructure of power in Venezuela is heavily concentrated around President Maduro and his government. They control the judiciary, the Supreme Court. The military are loyal to him. So are very heavily armed paramilitaries. So the big question now is, how does the US navigate what it is clear is its aim here? Does it try to push for further elections? Is it going to try and remove other members of the government in Venezuela, whether that's other ministers or senior figures within the military? The problem with that, as I say, it is very clear that Maduro still does have some very powerful allies in the country who will now be fearing for their future after seeing the capture and charges levelled against President Maduro.
Ione, thank you very much for that. To the rest of the day's news now. Officials in Switzerland say the bodies of 4 of the victims of the bar fire tragedy have been identified and returned to their families. 2 of them were aged 16. Authorities have warned it could take days, if not weeks, to identify the victims of the blaze, which killed 40 and injured more than 100 others, many of whom are fighting for their lives. Our Europe correspondent Sarah Rainsford reports now from Crans-Montana.
After the fire, the flowers keep coming, and the notes left in memory of the dozens who came here to celebrate the new year, but never came home. A teenager, Charlotte Nidham, is believed to be among the missing. Born in France but educated in England, her old school has written to parents asking for their love and prayers for her. The bar was full of young people when the fire broke out. Now many families here are waiting for news. These images show how the fire started, with the ceiling set alight and the young crowd dancing on, even filming, oblivious at first to the danger. But the blaze grows so quickly, many won't make it. One survivor talks of how he hid at first. He confirms seeing a sparkler on a champagne bottle causing the fire.
I felt a ball of fire pass over my head. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I couldn't breathe, because the fire was taking all the air. I clung to a table and managed to pull myself out.
The Constellation bar is still sealed off from view. The fire was in the basement, and those who made it out have described a terrible crush on the stairs. The bar's owners have already been questioned about safety measures here, with so many dead and more critically ill in hospital with severe burns. They include Italians who were on holiday. The country's ambassador says an investigation will clarify exactly what happened, the causes, he says, and who's responsible. There may yet be criminal charges. And this morning, the first of the dead were identified. All of them Swiss, 2 just 16 years old. Their bodies returned to families who had hoped, but are now grieving. Sarah Rainsford, BBC News, Cole, Montana.
Here, searches for a third person are continuing after 2 bodies were pulled from the sea off the East Yorkshire coast. Emergency services launched a rescue operation in the sea off Windsea yesterday. A 67-year-old man was pulled unconscious from the water and died at the scene, while a second person's body was recovered last night. But that's all from me. There's plenty more on the BBC News website as always. The next news here on BBC One is at 5:15. Bye for now.